Good afternoon, Irene.
Good afternoon.
Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
I want to talk about something that's serious today.
If you watch YouTube on a regular basis, you know that YouTube will make suggestions as to things you should watch. And because we watch a lot of YouTubers who are off-grid or some sort of homesteading or farming or veggie growing or something, we get recommendations in that department, sort of vaguely, on a regular basis. And some of them are pretty cool.
And some of them are pretty naive.
Oh, goodness gracious. This guy the other day, I saw the video and it said, living off-grid, and I thought, oh, cool. I'm curious to see what he has to say. He's obviously standing in a forest. I started listening to him, and Henry wandered in and said, what you watching? And I told him, and he sat down to watch, and we can't repeat in polite company some of the things we said, but basically the concept was a significant percentage of it was BS. If you believe this guy, you could be in a world of hurt.
This morning, we went down towards a neighbor's house. And the reason why we did that is I got up and I looked out the window and there's black smoke going up into the sky, and it's going in the fashion of a house fire. We live off-grid. Our neighbors all live off-grid because there's not a phone line or a electric line or a water line within 6 miles of our house. So if you're going to live out here, you're going to live off-grid. Unfortunately, this one neighbor, I'm not sure who he is because we haven't been down that way in quite a number of years. He was busy trying to rodent-proof his RV trailer that they were living in, he and his wife were living in. He was using some of that insulation stuff that comes in a spray can.
Yeah, the foam.
And unfortunately, what most people don't think about is the propellant to make the foam come out is flammable. Well, he was busy filling up the holes, and there was a flashover, and stuff caught fire.
Right. I was telling my daughter the day when I talked to her, I'll bet the hot water heater turned on.
Or there's a standing flame on the hot water heater if it's an older hot water heater. Either way, stuff caught fire. They both got out of the trailer. Everything burned all the way to the frame.
So that means anything that was in that building, that trailer, toast.
Let me go back to what we saw on this video. The guy has a very large following.
Well, he's obviously done some really cool projects. He's done a whole bunch. He lives in a forest.
He's built a ton of log cabins.
Yeah. Lots of them. And we saw a couple of pictures. They look quite nice. They look great, so that it gives you that sense of confidence that he knows what he's talking about. But we think he sort of missed a few really important points.
The premise that he talks about is you can go off-grid to pursue a simpler life. Well, some people would do that. Simpler life means you don't have any electricity, you don't have any running water, you don't have any telephone, cell phone, anything like that. Now, this fellow's in his mid-20s, and he hasn't suffered some of the outrageous slings of life.
Right. Well, you know, when you're in your mid-20s, you can do anything. Until you can't.
Until almost 5 years ago, I could do pretty much anything that I wanted to do physically. February 17th, 2017, I was pushed off the interstate at 75 miles an hour by a tractor trailer. That caused a lot of damage, and I'm still trying to recover from that here almost 5 years later.
Well, you never will recover from it because there's things they can't fix. When you're 25, 26 years old, I got to work from sunrise to sundown. I remember cutting firewood with a baby on my back in a backpack. Didn't think anything of it. It was something I did every day. But that's the age I was, so I could do that.
This fellow said one of the beauties of going off-grid is there's no surprises. Well, I'm here to tell you that's BS.
Yes, there's always a surprise. Well, one of the things he was talking about was you could put up this wall tent and live in that, and I'm like, there's bears where you live. Bears go, oh, look, it's a package with dinner in it. No surprises? I don't know. That hungry bear at 2 o'clock in the morning might be a big darn surprise.
His premise was, we heat with wood, so there's no propane to run out, there's no electricity to run out. Basically, it's lowest common denominator of heat. Well, that's great if you're hardy and healthy and you don't injure yourself cutting wood. You know, most people don't realize it, but logging, that is cutting wood, is the single most dangerous occupation in the U.S. There are more people killed and maimed cutting firewood and cutting logs than any other profession.
A tree turns out to be hollow, it falls in the wrong direction. The breeze comes up at just the wrong moment. There's something in the trunk of the tree you didn't know about. That the chainsaw bucks and hits you. There's a million different disasters that can happen. And you cannot tell me, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe he did cut all his trees down with an axe. It's possible. But we've seen some pretty nasty damages from people who've had accidents with axes too.
But you know, the idea is that there's no furnace.
Right.
So there's no big expensive thing to break. But you know what? One of the problems you have with heating with wood is you can have chimney fires. Now, I'm pretty sure he's not experienced that. I have.
Yeah, I've seen a chimney fire before.
Chimney fires are no joke. They're nothing to fool around with. They're something to be really cautious about. How does the prospect of no running water appeal to you?
I've done it before. It's fine when I'm camping for a week. I tell you what, when you have to break the water on the cattle tank, the ice on the cattle tank to flush the toilet because you have a broken pipe, and that's having the cattle tank and having the water there and only having to walk
50
feet with a bucket of water. I'm really not that keen on that. Having to melt snow or boil water to just even rinse my hands off, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
We've done it, though.
We have done it before in multiple locations around the United States. Using an outhouse when it's 5 degrees outside. Now, that's fun.
Probably the biggest thing that got me this morning, and really was the reason why we decided to go ahead and do this show today, was the idea that when you go off grid, there's no surprises. Now, if you really strip it down, you heat with wood, you cut with a bow saw, you haul water by hand,
and you've got the infrastructure set up. In other words, maybe you're collecting water off the roof, or you've got a spring really close by. Oh, that doesn't freeze in the wintertime? We've talked to people before and we've seen them on the videos where, like, everybody in the area says this spring has never frozen before. This year it did. So we're melting snow for water instead of using the spring.
The concept that there's no surprises, if you strip down your living conditions down to bare minimum, and you're living in an area that has 4 climates over the course of the year, you're heating with wood, you're hauling water by hand, you're burning wood in a wood stove.
Oh, by the way, wood stoves do wear out at some point. And they cost money in the first place.
You're doing all these things in a stripped down fashion, and the idea that there's no surprises, there are plenty of surprises to happen. You could get bitten by a poisonous spider. You could get a snake bite. You could cut a finger off. You could bury a hatchet in your shin, like our son Scoutmaster did many years ago in the backwoods in Maine, in the wilderness area, and the only alternative was to sew him up on the spot.
He was making it sound so mythological. That's the only way I could put. It was like Camelot, everything's wonderful here. We never have any. Nobody ever gets sick. Nobody ever breaks an ankle, ruins their clothes,
gets pregnant.
There's always the opportunity for disaster. Now, if you're talking about the intrusion of modern technology, in some ways, he's right. You don't have to worry about your cable being out because you don't have any. You don't have to worry about the power outage damaging your freezer because You don't have any. On the other hand, the ability of most modern people to preserve meat in quantity, say you got a deer. Okay, what would they have done in the old days? They'd have hung it, and they'd have started processing it right away. And before canning, which is a relatively new, I mean, that was basically something that didn't get to be popular until after 1900.
He has an idea that, well, you can live in a tent and you don't need a permit to live in a tent. Well, the answer is, in most parts of the United States, you do need a permit to live in a tent. Most land cannot be lived on for more than 2 weeks over the course of the year without a specific permit.
Right.
Well, as soon as you have a permit, you have government. Government's fine, but now you have to start adhering to specific regulations, zoning and land use, and how you're treating your waste products, how you're treating your water sources, all those types of issues, you have to follow the rules. The idea of not requiring permits to do things on your own land is something that most places in the U.S. is not a good idea. Most places do require permits. Now, he's said things like, well, put up a tent. Well, no one's going to come in your tent to see that you've built a cabin inside your tent. You know, it's difficult to keep government officials off your property. Mm-hmm. You have to fence it. You have to have no trespassing signs. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. And on top of all that, most people don't realize that it is legal for the police or building inspectors or zoning inspectors to come onto your property for a legitimate governmental purpose.
Right, and all it takes is one pissed off neighbor, and they've got that.
At the end of it all, you want to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble with your local government agency, whether it's a town, whether it's a township, whether it's a city, a county, or even the state. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that you're not going to be getting yourself into trouble there, because frankly, it's not worth it. A lot of times you can go and get an inexpensive permit to do some things. He's right about one thing. 95% of the battle is getting started. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of getting started. But you know, if you're in your early 20s, do a good, dispassionate self-assessment. Do I have skills that will allow me to do things? The bottom line is you need to have at least some skills before you go out to a piece of raw land and plan on building a future for yourself and other people.
Mm-hmm. You know, I went to Shelter Institute in Maine many, many years ago and took their basic home builders class. And it covered all the basic stick building. It also covered foundations, it covered septic, it covered all the basics of you doing it yourself and just complying with the state rules. Posted beam was part of it, you know, all that sort of stuff. How do you roof? How do you do this? How do you do it? It wasn't super in depth, but it gave you all the structure of how to do this sort of stuff. There's just a lot of things that you can avoid problems with by learning ahead of time.
Well, thanks for watching. I actually wanted to go off on a rant, but decided to hold back because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I don't want to see people go out and fail. I want to see people come out and succeed, whether it's to build a place, to get somebody to come in and build a place for them, whether it's to garden, whatever it is that they're going to do. I want to see people succeed because there's too many opportunities for it to fail. I hope this was interesting to you. I hope it's helpful.
I hope it makes you think. When you hear someone say something like, "There's no surprises ever," and my first thought when I saw that tent was, bear will come through the side of that in a heartbeat. One swat of the paw, and then he lived in bear country. Okay.
Do you know what time it is, Irene?
It is time to get going, but we're hoping that this will make people not always instantly accept. If somebody's making it sound too rosy, it probably is too rosy.
Well, at least their statement is too rosy.
Yeah, because, you know, I'll be the first one to agree with him that there's nothing like sitting out there and watching the stars at night. Nothing. I mean, you can hear yourself think.
Say goodbye, Irene.
So, until next time, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And think twice before you leap off a cliff, because we're not telling you not to do it, but we are telling you to think about it.
And be prepared.
Yes. So, until next time. Bye.
Keep brainstorming.
Yes, you need to, no matter where you live.